Price of fuel will increase further on Wednesday, even not by as much as was initially anticipated. The price of a litre of petrol will still increase between 28 and 36 cents per litre, depending on the grade, while a litre of diesel will increase between R1.52 and R1.68 per litre, depending on the grade. This is thanks to the R1.50 reduction in the fuel levy, bringing some relief to consumers.
The price of fuel will go up on Wednesday this week, but will not be as steep as earlier expected. The high increase has been set off by the reduction in the fuel levy by R1.50 for 2 months. The Department of Mineral Resources and Energy says it's because of the increase in oil prices during the period under review. This caused by the sanctions imposed on Russia and the limited supply from oil producers despite increasing global demand.
The main reasons for these increases are as follows. Firstly, the higher oil prices, which led to higher prices of petroleum product, mainly due to the Russia-Ukraine conflict, fuel demand concerns in China due to the lockdown, as well as the fact that the Yemen rebels attacked storage facilities in Saudi Arabia. Secondly, the stronger rand against the dollar, which cushioned the prices by around 17 cents per litre, 17 to 19 cents a litre.
There is hope that the oil price will go down in the next 2 months, in time before the levy reduction comes to an end.
A lot of depends on what is going to happen over the next 2 months. And we're talking here about international oil prices and the exchange rate of the rand. We've seen the exchange rate working in our favor, helping to contain the impact of high international oil prices. But what we hope for is that over the next few weeks, oil prices will come down enough to really result in a reduction in the basic fuel price.
The price of paraffin will go up by R2.66 per litre, and that of LP gas goes up by R2.50 per litre. Flora Sefako Mosi, SABC News, Johannesburg.
To talk a little bit more about this, the impact of further increase in fuel prices in South Africa, Program Director at the Pietermaritzburg Economic Justice and Dignity, Mervyn Abrahams, joins us. A very good evening to you, Mr. Abrahams, and thank you so much for speaking to us. So, it's really cringeworthy news when one thinks about how nervous one gets when they go to the petrol pumps, because you actually don't know how much you're going to pay. So with the cut in the fuel levy by 40%, is this all the government can do to help the consumer?
Good evening, Tsepiso, and good evening to all your viewers. Firstly, the reduction in the levy, of course, is some relief to the motorists at the pump. Unfortunately, the crisis around cost of living has become so deep that we do not expect that this smaller increase will have much impact on larger things such as food prices, agricultural commodity prices, etc. So government will have to think around other means to sustain and to help citizens and industry, for that matter, particularly farmers, in the foreseeable future, because we do not see this crisis abating within the next few months.
And just this excitement about the reduction in the fuel levy, the finance minister, I think, mentioning until the end of May. But what happens then? I'm just trying to understand, will there be relief after all?
And I think that is a matter for the Minister of Finance, of course, to answer. What happens when that 2 months is no longer there and the fuel levy goes back to its original price? Tsepiso, I think what we really have to see is the fact that we are, South African households and South African economy and businesses are in a crisis. We're in a crisis because of the fuel price, but we're also in a crisis because of very high food commodity prices like wheat, sunflower. We've seen food prices increase by in excess of 10% this year, according to our index. We see a 9% increase in electricity tariffs coming into play in July. Interest rates are on an upward trajectory. So really households are really feeling the pinch. And of course, household incomes are not keeping track with the levels of increases around essential goods and services. And therein lies the rub. How do we ensure that households are able to withstand these shocks? And unfortunately, at the moment, there is no answer. And I think going forward, government will have to start thinking very seriously about how do we build resilience in the South African economy, but as well as in the South African household, because these shocks like fuel price increases, high commodity prices are going to be with us in future. So how do we build the resilience so that we can withstand these shocks?
So what can government do within the fiscal framework? I mean, at the moment, I understand it's working towards full deregulation of the price of petrol, allowing for greater competition, that people would probably benefit from buying from cheaper retailers. But will it benefit all? Because I understand, according to some economists, that would also depend on where you live, how much competition is in the area that you live, etc.
Exactly. Deregulation is not always the answer to every single problem, because it is very likely that with deregulation, those in the cities will be able to lower prices, which will create a disjuncture between the rural South Africa and urban South Africa. We are also likely to see more and more companies coming together, and that could potentially lead to job losses. So there are different issues to do with deregulation. So really what we have to do in this country is really we have to ensure that the economy can create the kind of jobs that allows households to be able to have the means, the financial means and the savings to withstand these kind of shocks. Deregulation will help in some respects. It will create other problems, and it could possibly create a further unemployment. So it's not the answer to all our problems. And that is what makes this such a difficult and complex problem.
So how should we go about it then? What policy initiatives should government be undertaking? Because as the President announced earlier on, the end of the national state of disaster, people are at least feeling that this means there's more room for the economy to get going again. But I mean, what happens in a household, low-income households, those that are food insecure already, that doesn't necessarily, lighten the load for them. And with electricity also going up.
Exactly. None of these lighten the load. In fact, it just makes the crisis deeper. We believe as a Pietermaritzburg Economic Justice and Dignity Group that actually what we require in South Africa is much more long-term planning. What we are currently seeing, and to some extent citizens are also asking for, is crisis management, because we are in this particular crisis. How do you help us in this crisis? But really the answer is in long-term resilience in the economy. And in order to effect that, unfortunately, I don't believe that government has the means to resolve these problems within a 2 or 3 month period. It has to be a long-term solution. And part of the long-term solution is to lessen our exposure to high fuel prices. One of the ways in which we can do that is to begin to move our logistics from road to rail, get Praza back online, that lessens our exposure, begin to think more and support small-scale farmers around our cities and localize our food systems in such a way that we grow our food closer to the table where we eat it. That also will lessen our exposure to some of these fuel price increases that we will see again and again and again.
Mervyn Abrahams, thank you so much for speaking to us. Pleasure to hear your thoughts on the fuel price increase that's in the offing on Wednesday. Mervyn Abrahams is Program Director at the Pietermaritzburg Economic Justice and Dignity Project. So we're going to take a quick break, but when we return, still more news to come, including a look at the political situation in Tunisia. All of that and more here. So.